Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wine by the Bay TV. I'm your host, George Bachara. Today is our Valentine's Day episode. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. I already wished my wife a happy Valentine's Day, so don't get on me for that. We have our little Valentine's Day bee to keep us company. Is it a bee? Well, it's kind of a bee and a dog, or maybe some kind of bear. I'm not really sure, but either way, it's a bear ladybug. I forgot. I got this for the missus because she's a big ladybug person. And today we're going to do some Valentine's Day themed wines. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, champagne, something like that. No, we're not going to do that. That would be too easy. And frankly, we just did a little champagne for New Year's. So we're not going to do that. We're going to go with something a little bit different. I was thinking to myself, most people go out to restaurants for Valentine's Day, and what's something that goes with Valentine's Day? Maybe you treat yourself that you wouldn't normally have, even out to dinner, and that's dessert. So what better to go with dessert than dessert wines? And one of the classic dessert wines is port. Port is a red wine. It is from Portugal. It's a fortified wine. Fortified wine means they take brandy, a spirit made from grapes, like a clear brandy, and they add it to the wine to stabilize the wine. So actually, this is something that was developed, I believe it was in the 1600s, when they were shipping wine from Portugal to Britain. And they decided to do this to stabilize the wine so it wouldn't go bad on the voyage. And they liked the style, they sweetened it up, and it's kind of evolved over time. But port wine, again, only from Portugal, is a classic after dinner drink. And if you're going to have chocolate, or maybe like a creme brulee or something like that, there's definitely room on your table for port. Okay, but before I go there, I wanted to remind you that our show is sponsored by Goosehead Insurance, the Bachara agency. That's me. I don't know what to tell you if you haven't reached out yet. I mean, home, auto, life, motorcycle, RV, trailer. I mean, you name it, I do it. And I do it for you. You don't have to call 25 different companies. You get the benefit of me searching those 25 or 30 or 35 companies, whatever it may be. And I do the work for you. So you give me the information once, and then I use the information you give me to find the best price and the best coverage, frankly. So, what are you waiting for? Go down into the description box. First of all, like, subscribe, and share this video and subscribe to the channel. Then after you do that, follow the link below in the description box and put your information in and let me go to work for you. Okay? Enough of that. It's Valentine's Day, like I said. So it's time to think about others and not about ourselves. Well, insurance is kind of like that. But regardless, we are going to think about others and talk about a great dinner and a great dessert. So I have two wines that I picked out for you. By the way, in terms of port, there are two, well, there's more than two styles, but the two biggest general styles are like a ruby port or a tawny port. So ruby port is aged in large oak barrels. I mean, not barrels, really vats. So the idea is to keep it as sweet and fruit forward as possible and then put it in a bottle. And then it ages the rest of the time in the bottle. Whereas a tawny port is put in smaller barrels, so more of that wood characteristic comes into it. So it tends to be a bit more oaky, a bit more like toast, and maybe a little spicy, has a little bit of a nut component to it, and you're going to see it's not as dark and red as the ruby port. So having said that, I have a couple of ones that I picked out that are very popular in restaurants, on restaurant wine lists. I wanted to choose something that wasn't very eclectic, because that way you have good chance that you're going to see one of these ports on a wine list, on a dessert list, on your Valentine's Day table. So let's go ahead and give those a taste. So the first one that I chose was the Dow 10-year Tawny, which is this one right here. So as we said, the Tawny port is going to be a little bit more woody, not as, more of a brick color. And that one I bought for $27.99 at Total Wine. One other thing to say about port. Now, I know this is kind of in the context of a restaurant, so it's not really a problem. But if you happen to taste the port that you like and you want to keep a bottle, they sit 3, 4, 5 months, especially if you put them in the fridge. They're fortified with brandy, with neutral spirit. So they don't go bad after 2 or 3 days or a week or whatever. So I'm gonna taste these wines and I'm gonna hold these wines, and I'll drink them throughout the month probably. Anyway, so let's go ahead and start with the Dows. Okay. Typically, your port pour is 3 ounces. And if you notice, I put the cork right back on there. I'm really not worried about aerating the port as much. I mean, yeah, it probably should get a little bit of air, but this isn't a wine like a regular non-fortified wine. And if you can see in the camera, I don't know if you can or not, but you can see how light this wine is. I mean, it's almost it has a brick hue to it for sure, a brownish color. You know, like a red brick is slightly brown. Well, that's kind of what you got going on here. Definitely spicy. Definitely, I don't want to go so far as to say red wine vinegar, but you can kind of see that it's tilting in that style. It's not acidic like a red wine vinegar, but that after smell, that wooden smell, is definitely prominent. And that's why, by the way, I put the cutting board here, because I don't know if you can, you can't see the cutting board. Hang on. Let me do this. The cutting board is here. I apologize to you, cutting board, for not giving you screen time. Because I had a feeling, I mean, not only did I have a feeling, I know that Tawny port, and this is a 10-year Tawny, by the way. So that means it's been aged for 10 years before it was released. So that's great. I mean, there's 10-year, there's 20-year, there's 30-year, there's 40-year. And as you get up there in age, less of the red color comes in and more of that brick or brownish color starts to take over on your Tawny ports. Let me see if I can give you a better look at the color. You can definitely see through it. It's not very opaque. Okay, so the other thing I did to kind of simulate your restaurant experience is I brought some dessert, sort of. So I have this is a little bit too dark of a chocolate really to make a fair comparison, but this is a dark chocolate, 95% cocoa. And this is a See's candy, but this is a caramel flavor. So the caramel flavor, which is to represent like creme brulee, if you order creme brulee or something along those lines at a restaurant, maybe a cheesecake with a caramel topping or something like that, that would pair better with your Tawny port. Whereas the darker chocolate will pair better with your ruby port. So again, I'm trying to kind of simulate your experience in the dining room of a restaurant, so you can kind of make an intelligent decision based on what you order for dessert, what you may want to drink as an after dinner drink. So first, let's taste the wine without the dessert. So let's do that. You really want to let the finish come in for you, because as it sits on my palate, like the dry apricot and the very subtle sort of almost nutmeg flavor, nutmeg or cinnamon or something in that family, kind of washes forward after about 15 seconds or so. So that was that's a pretty classic expression of a Tawny port. Now again, as you go up in age, the price goes up, and I don't know what everybody's budget is, so I didn't want to go too crazy. But if you really want to experience like an intense, dry, woody Tawny port, you could certainly do that, but you just have to pay a little more. And like I say, I want to try and be as accessible as possible in terms of like a broader audience. So this is more stylistic than it is, looking for the heavy hitter. I don't want to exclude anybody from the experience. So I would say that this is drinking exactly kind of as I expected it to drink. It definitely lingers. It has a long finish. I mean, that's probably the brandy, obviously. The other thing you'll notice too with port, to digress a little bit, many times they have like British sounding names. And as we mentioned earlier, like Dow or Sandeman or something like that, Croft. That's because, again, these British businessmen were coming over and importing this wine. So they would establish companies, bottling companies for the port. And then they would, export it to Britain. So that's kind of how things went. That's why you see the names like that. They're not very Portuguese names. So now we're going to try it with the caramel. So like a creme brulee kind of thing. Sweeten it up a little bit. This definitely took down some of the alcohol. There was a lot of alcohol for obvious reasons. They're doing it on purpose. In the Tawny, it was a little bit more pronounced on the attack of the palate when I first had a sip. But having this first, really changed the experience. Yeah, that's quite pleasant. That works out quite well. So now we're going to try it with the dark chocolate. Really and truly, you can do this with chocolate. But optimally, Tawny port would probably be better with milk chocolate, but I just don't have any. To be honest with you, I went to one of those high-end candy stores. I won't mention the name. A couple of days ago, and the line was so long that it was frightening, and I just couldn't take it. So I left. My bad. But if anybody knows me out there, they know I'm impatient, and there was no way I was standing online with like 15 people deep, almost out the door to get 2 little pieces of candy. So we're stuck with what we got. So we're going to try the dark chocolate. I'll be drinking some water to neutralize my palate a little bit, to kind of give you a fair comparison. This destroys any of the excess alcohol on the attack. There was a little bit of a diminishment with the caramel, but this dark chocolate, it just kills it. You don't taste it at all. But it really brings out the brown baking spices. And to some degree, no, it even kills the apricot flavor. Yeah, you don't get the dried fruit flavor. You really just, the dark chocolate just overpowers this. I'm not saying it's unpleasant. It's plenty pleasant, but the dark chocolate flavor kind of overwhelms the woodiness of this wine. So, excuse me, I'm kind of a pig. Okay, so we're gonna do a little rinse. The other thing I couldn't find is 2 port glasses, ladies and gentlemen. As you might imagine, I don't keep a whole lot of port in the house. I mean, unless you drink regularly, have a lot of dinner parties, having a big port selection in your house sounds kind of unusual to me. So I went looking for a couple of port glasses, and I couldn't find any. I guess everyone else was thinking what I was thinking. So I'm just going to rinse this really quickly. So now give the glass, get rid of that leftover situation. And right away, just from rinsing the glass, you can tell this is much more bluish, blue-purple. By the way, this is the Fonseca Bin 27 Ruby Port. I forgot to write down the price. My apologies. I know it wasn't more than $25. Again, I made a concerted effort to keep it in a very tamped down price point, because let's face it, in a restaurant, these are anywhere between $9 and $15 a glass. So depending on where you are. So I didn't want to go too crazy in the a $60 bottle, so every glass is $25 or $30. So I wanted to keep it so no matter where you're going, whether you're going to a fancy restaurant or a not so fancy restaurant, you have an opportunity to try one of these wines if you see them. So that's the Fonseca Bin 27 Ruby Port from Douro in Portugal. Yeah, this is definitely more of a Cabernet Merlot color. It's not as intense. It's definitely less clear than the Tawny was. And it's got some blue fruit on it right away. I would imagine there's going to be some raspberry, some blueberry. I don't think based on the color there'll be much blackberry. Excuse me. Maybe a little black cherry. But I won't know until I try it. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is 20% alcohol by volume. The other was, wow, I really can't see, I'm sorry. Also 20% alcohol by volume, I think. If I'm wrong, I will amend it in the comments below. But because it's more fruit forward, you don't sense the alcohol as much as you did on the first try with the Douse. So it's a more approachable style of wine, especially if you're going to go with chocolate. So I'm going to go with chocolate first. This is going to pair well with the chocolate. I can tell you already. The chocolate did for this wine what the caramel did for the Tawny. The chocolate muted the alcohol a little bit and brought out the berry flavors, the blueberry specifically. I'm not tasting any blackberry and no raspberry. So this is very blueberry. Maybe some I don't know. I mean, yeah, definitely blueberry, maybe a little mulberry, maybe some cassis, but that underlying alcohol is there. Like if you really think about it, it warms your throat just a little bit. And again, with the chocolate, it's not as pronounced on the attack. You kind of feel it as it goes through your mouth. So I'm curious to see how this is going to react to the caramel. While I'm giving my palate a chance to breathe, I did forget to mention there is another common type of port you're going to see on the wine list. This is a late bottle vintage LBV. So what that is that's a ruby port from a single vintage that is allowed to age like a Tawny port. So it's put in oak barrels and aged for 4 to 6 years. I shouldn't say that. It's not oak barrels, it's oak vats. So it's not as woody, it's not as bricky, but it's not as fruit forward as the ruby port would be. So it's kind of an in between. It's actually late bottle vintage is great wine. I like late bottle vintage a lot. And it's a little more versatile. You're not as stuck in one style or another. So let's try this with the caramel. So we're going to try the Fonseca. Sorry, just trying to get the caramel taste. Kind of get that dark chocolate out of my mouth a little bit. All right, here we go. That actually brought the alcohol forward into my nostrils, into the front of my mouth. And then the fruit is more of the aftertaste. And the caramel, I'm getting a little bit of like a tertiary flavor of the caramel. I'm looking for it because I'm aware of what I'm eating. Like if I was having a creme brulee or something and I had this, you get that alcohol first, then you get the berry flavor, and then you definitely get a little bit of that caramel or vanilla flavor after it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely cassis and blueberry in here. I mean, no question about it. But like I say, with the caramel, that caramel is the aftertaste, is the finish. You go from alcohol to fruit to caramel. When you're doing the chocolate, the alcohol is muted and it's more fruit with the chocolate undertone. And of course, the fact that this is 95% chocolate is kind of skewing things a little bit. So like this is like a lava cake kind of chocolate. But yeah, I mean, if you're out to dinner and it's Valentine's Day, you know you're going to do dessert. So you might as well do an after dinner drink, right? And this is an after dinner drink that everybody can drink. If you want to be a little more adventurous, you could do the Tawny, something that's a little bit more drying, a bit more toasty. Or if you want something that's super easy to drink that you can share, you know, two of the same thing, you can go with a ruby port. Always a good choice. Very easy to drink. Nobody's going to be, you know, like off put by a port wine. So have a happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is another episode of Wine by the Bay TV. Thank you for joining me. Spend Valentine's Day with someone you love, or spend Valentine's Day with somebody you want to love. But come back and see me again. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.